Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. I know this was very spontaneous live stream. I haven't really announced this live stream with Alex KRAINER much in advance. Oh, I see you're joining us. Thank you so much. So I'm sure that ultimately there will be more people coming across or maybe after it will be posted already. And Alex is great because he responds to my emails like pretty much no other person that fast. I appreciate very much for coming back on my channel, Alex, especially today that I really wanted to have a conversation with you. You don't really need much introduction. However, I will say that you are a great geopolitical commentator. Many people absolutely love your analysts, and you're also a market analyst, which is something I would like to learn about, but that will be after live stream. I will ask that question. And you are also an author. There are links to Alex already down below the live stream, as well as his X account. Welcome back, Alex. Thank you for finding time again.
Thank you for having me, Anya. Good to join you again.
Thank you. So, as we know, well, most of us, if you don't, then you probably have very healthy lifestyle. Trump has been just sworn in. I was one of those who I really wanted to, I'm in Washington, D.C. right now. Very cold indeed, even for Polish person, I can say it's pretty cold. But I've watched the ceremony, I wasn't there, of course, but I watched this on my computer, and he already made some pretty strong statements there. Have you had a chance to watch that, Alex, or you were busy?
No, Anya, unfortunately, I did not get a chance to watch it. I had stuff to do that I couldn't delay. So why didn't you fill us in? I'm curious to know, actually.
Well, besides the fact that is probably the least important, however, I'm sure media will highlight it, Carrie Underwood, who is a country music singer, was performing and the music didn't play. So there was an awkward moment, but I was like, just sing it, soul a cappella, right? Just sing it, because that is like the real, like the soul comes out. So she did, and it was great, but that was probably what a lot of media will focus on, as they like to do that. I have to say, watching those politicians, Alex, coming out through this path that leads to the seats they're supposed to take, watching their body language, thinking about those people, how much pain they have created in the world, how disgusting it is, and even to be there and knowing that you are at this moment like time out for you, seeing Bush and Clinton and Obama and whoever is in Biden's skin, because God only knows. But Trump said few things, a lot of things actually. During his speech, he announced that there will be an external revenue service which will be dealing with like he was describing that as that I don't know what he's gonna do to taxes, what he's gonna do with IRS, but he was talking about putting I forgot the word, what he wants to do with other countries. I'm so not prepared for this. He wants to put the
tariffs, right?
Tariffs. This is exactly the department that will be created, a new thing, external revenue service. He talked about taking over Panama Canal, like actually he made like pretty obvious statement that this will be like America, not Mexico, Mexico Bay. I think this will be American Bay. He also emphasized free speech. End of story, free speech from now on. And he said that there is no more social engineering races, so there is only men and women from now on. We see how this goes, and especially in California and some other states. And I would like to ask you this. There was Giorgia Meloni, I saw somehow, maybe I'm hallucinating, but I saw Boris Johnson, or maybe someone who looked like, but actually someone who looked like Boris Johnson. So I don't know if I am having some strange visions or he was there. Steinmeier was not there. Olaf Scholz was not invited. Macron was not invited. So here is my question for you, the first one. How long do you think European Union will last?
I don't know that it's possible to predict this, Tanya, but it's already it seems to me that European Union is already disintegrating. And, you know, we're getting more and more statements from people like Orban and, you know, Prime Minister of Hungary and Robert Fico, Prime Minister of Slovakia, who are clearly not happy with the way things are going in the European Union. And then we also had Donald Trump, who is now openly floating the idea of the United States exiting the NATO. And NATO is pretty much Europe's security guarantee. Without NATO, European countries are going to have to come up with their own security, which has been very, very heavily compromised because every country that entered into NATO had to kind of subordinate their own defense to the way NATO is organized. I'll give you an example. Croatia. We had some of our own defense industry. In Croatia, we produced, for example, a tank based on the Soviet model. I think the Croatians produced T-90 or T-80, you know, an improved version of T-70. And we had to scrap that completely. We had to scrap all the heavy weapons produced in Croatia, you know, cannons, howitzers, the rounds for those weapons, because we had to, you know, sync our arsenals with NATO nations. NATO goes away, then we're at the mercy of the private military contractors. I don't know how that's going to work, and I don't know that, you know, is every European country going to stand in line for you know, at Lockheed Martin and Raytheon to get their supplies of what they're selling? It's going to be a very, very difficult period. But I think that the process, which is irreversible and the political establishment will not be able to control it, is the financial disintegration. You know, we're going to have inflation that is going to reaccelerate, and ultimately the euro is going to revert back to its intrinsic value, which, you know, is close to toilet paper. And then I don't know what the solution will be, but most probably countries will go back to national currencies. Now, the process of inflation can unfold very rapidly, or it can be gradual and span 10, 15, 20 years. Maybe not quite 20, but let's say 10, 15 years. Historically, we had episodes where inflation, the onset of inflation was very rapid and very sudden, like when the Soviet Union collapsed, German Weimar Republic in 1921-22. And then we have many examples of inflation taking many years of slow acceleration to reach the hyperinflationary levels. I don't know that it's possible to predict exactly what's going to be the path of unraveling for the European Union, but I would say if we're optimistic, maybe we have 10 years. if we're not
10 years of EU existing still, you think?
Yes, yes. And I think that if we're less optimistic, I think it might disintegrate within Donald Trump's presidency because he for sure will not help the EU. He might, he might cooperate constructively with individual countries, Hungary, Italy, I don't know which others, but it will depend on political leadership. I'm sure that if AfD comes to power in Germany, that then the relations between the United States and Germany will improve. If some kind of Gaullist faction comes to power in France, there's going to be improvement in relations with France. But look who's not invited to inauguration today, Frau von der Leyen.
Yes.
It's a very, very clear message. So I think that basically outside of Europe, I don't know that many countries actually give any legitimacy to the European Union. In this respect, it has largely isolated itself. You remember a few years ago, von der Leyen went to a meeting in Turkey, and they didn't even provide a chair for her. She had to kind of sit herself on the sofa.
I remember that. Yep.
That was a message. When she goes to China, they don't treat them with full honors. When she wasn't invited to the inauguration of Donald Trump now, the Russians don't give them any legitimacy either. It's a very, very strange situation, but I think that both in the eyes of their constituents at home and in the eyes of their potential partners abroad, the EU has already lost legitimacy. And that means that sovereignist parties like, party of Viktor Orban, Fico, we recently had elections in Croatia where the president, who is kind of anti-EU, has won close to 75% of the vote. And so those movements are gaining support. So without public support, you don't have a political system. It's a, how do you call it? It's the French would say a mise en scène, which, how would you translate that? A show, basically. A show, like a ritual.
Facade. It's a facade, like a facade.
Yes, it's a facade. It's a facade with not much behind it.
So in this case, let's just imagine, because I'm trying to imagine this like a regular person. If we have Viktor Orban and we have Robert Fico, those two, because those two are the closest to the exit, in my opinion, right? When they exit those two countries, do you think that this will stimulate, I've mentioned this in one of the live streams lately, this Chinese domino effect, and other countries will follow? And if so, how this will still exist, Alex? The rest that remains in this system.
It probably
if they exit, they don't participate, they don't have this rules anymore, they don't follow any of it, and then they direct the resources and energy, because this is connection to Russia, right? That's what it will be. This will be mainly Slovakia and Hungary and Turkey. I mean,
well, Romania, it remains to be seen what will come of Romania, but also Germany, because AfD, they said that they would did they say that they would consider exiting NATO or the EU? I forget now.
I don't know. I don't know. But it's kind. It's kind of like
Alice Weidel,
it's connected.
yeah, it's the same. Yeah, it's kind of the same thing. Alice Weidel suggested that if they come to power, that they will exit one or the other. I now I'm blanked out a little bit. There's too much going on to keep track of everything. So, well, you know, we've already seen in our lifetimes the collapse of the Soviet Union and the Warsaw Pact. So, you know, there comes a time when everybody agrees, okay, you know, this is not working. Let's somehow agree to say goodbye. They tear up these certain treaties. They no longer abide by them, and they start talking to their neighbors as sovereign parties. And then, you know, there's going to be, of course, cooperation between Hungary and her neighbors, and Slovakia and her neighbors, and Germany and her neighbors. There's probably going to be some conflict to resolve, and then they're going to be in a position to consider joining BRICS. Reestablishing cooperation with Russia, canceling all the sanctions, and if I'm convinced that it's going to be much better. The situation will be much better than what we have today.
So, at this moment, when they decided about 3 years ago now to completely disconnect from the Russian energy, right? And I'm again not an expert, I'm just putting this in the simple words. No more energy from Russia, sanction. Now we're gonna have a different provider, which again is not quite true because there is still energy going from Russia through India, etc. We know this, but mainly it's from United States, right? So the project with Ukraine, supporting Ukraine, this was the directives were coming from Biden administration, well, not even him, the people behind, and those faces you will never see, but they pull the strings. This was also forcing Europe to be part of it. So, Alex, this I'm just trying to think like this. All right, so if Trump is back on good terms with Putin, which I think will ultimately take place, how that moment, let's say peace now, namaste everybody, no more this, how those countries that were supporting that war will react, like all of a sudden, because this is just it will be really, you know, I don't know what to say, because it's like when you have no dignity at all, and now all of a sudden you change the direction.
I think there's going to be change in the political leadership, you know. So the new people will say, well, you know, we are for changes, for a new start, friendly relations with everyone, no hard feelings to anyone, blah blah blah. And the other people will just wither. They will vanish from the public scene. And then everybody will say, well, we always knew this was going to be like that. We were right, they were wrong. And life goes on.
So that means like those leaders, not just those who were not invited, for example, but let's use Macron. I actually want to ask you because you are in the region and I know you're in the country that I don't know how much Monaco depends on France, how much saying because it's independent country, but at the end of the day, you're surrounded by, you know, France and other countries. So let's say Macron is out. What does it really mean? Like how this is going to change? Is Le Pen going to be there, taking over? How do you see that?
I don't know. I don't know what's going to happen. I'm not sure that Le Pen is going to be coming to power. It could be somebody else. But I think that it's just going to be a change of guards. You know, when the Eastern Bloc collapsed in the early 1990s, in 1991, we basically switched from a one-party rule to a multi-party rule. The communists formed their own parties. They remained in part of the political establishment, but other parties took power. And the system started to gradually change from what we had before to what we have now. And, you know, there are initially some obvious changes, and then there's gradual adjustments that are almost constant. Well, you know, not everything was good about that. Quite to the contrary, a lot of it wasn't good at all. But, you know, basically, one day to the next, nothing much happens. You know, there's headlines, there's a lot of talk, there's a lot of discussion. But, you know, people still go to the same office to work, to the same workplaces. They continue doing what they do every day. The country just kind of collectively changes direction. And then you have new situation on the ground. I think what would be very, very important for us in Europe to have is at the very, very minimum, a kind of a Truth and Reconciliation Commission. Better yet, a Nuremberg 2.0 tribunal, because people who are part of the ruling establishment today, at the European Union level, have committed fairly grave crimes against humanity, and they took money for it. And so corruption is rampant. Not only are we talking about the pandemic, we're also talking about war in Ukraine. We need to know about these things, and we need to make sure that people who have done this do not enjoy their gains and their profits with impunity. So I think that would be an important part of the resolution. But apart from that, you know, there will be a change of guard. There will be, you know, again, I think that the precedents we can look into is what happened when the Soviet bloc collapsed. You know, big historical change, but in terms of daily lives of people, it continues in some way, and significant changes are kind of gradual. The one thing I was afraid of, I'm a lot less afraid of it now, was the prospect of Nazification of Europe. That's happening. That was planned, and that is being done. But if the United States is not driving this process, if they're not cooperating, if they're not fully part of it, then I think that it's much less likely to be successful and to run for full course, like in Ukraine between 2014 and 2022, or like in Germany in the 1930s. I think that if Donald Trump and his government are truly committed to sovereigntism, I don't know if I just invented a word there, but if they're truly supportive of sovereigntist movements in Europe, then this process of Nazification is probably going to peter out, particularly because people are realizing what's going on. You know, we see that in places like Romania and Croatia. It'll be important that we keep talking about it. It'll be important that we push back, but I think that Germans in the 1930s were taken by surprise. They didn't know what was going on. They didn't know what was being done to them. And I think the same is the case for the Ukrainians. You know, they were being seduced with the prospect of joining the European Union. You know, the prestigious club of prosperous, advanced countries where human rights are sacrosanct and all of those things. And so they went along with a lot in order to earn that prize. They didn't realize it was a lure. It was a fake. I think that now in a lot of European countries, people are realizing that this is all fake, that this is all a big lie, a big deception, and that we are just being encouraged to keep running in these hamster wheels towards some. I don't even know if anybody believes anymore that we are working for some kind of a utopia, that we are. I think that people have lost their delusion to a large extent.
But when you talk about the Nazification and those Nazis that are still being alive and spread across Europe, so in this moment, Alex, do you think, as this project was sponsored by CIA, right, by American government, am I correct? The project in Ukraine with Nazis. This was after World War II.
Yes,
wasn't it?
No,
Actually.
The CIA had both CIA and NATO had extensive cooperation with the Ukrainians since the 1990s. But they are the project managers. They execute the agenda. CIA didn't formulate the agenda.
Right, but the money was coming from American side. Am I correct? Someone has to pay for this, right? Because how they get funded?
Of course, it came from the United States and other Western European countries as well. And also IMF and World Bank and other public and private financial institutions in a variety of ways. The think tanks, the NGOs, they all, USAID, National Endowments for Democracy, all of these organizations, German Marshall Fund, they all contributed. But it's not just about people who are Nazis. It's a whole social engineering project where you prepare the terrain by making sure that you immiserate the nation. In this way, you create a lot of unemployment, especially among the young people. And then you have a very large percentage of unemployed young men with no future. And then you go in with these NGOs and various organizations that spread money, who they attract the radical element among these. They kind of target football fans. We now everywhere have organized clubs of football fans, and somehow they're funded. Somehow they have money. But I think that's where they recruit the particularly radical, low IQ, violent types. And so, for a young man with no job, no future, no prospects, no hope of, getting married, raising a family, buying a home, this is very attractive. This suddenly gives them a purpose in life and a meaning. And then, they start getting brainwashed with these ideas about, the great nation that we are, and we have been stabbed in the back by, whoever is the designated enemy. And now we're going to right all those historical wrongs. We're going to fight these enemies. And of course, they tell you it's the Russians, or it's the communists, or it's the Jews, or whoever they want to do their divide and rule shtick against. And so in Germany in the 1930s, it was the Russian communists. In Ukraine, it was the Muscovite Jewish mafia. same thing. It's always the Russians, except, since the Russians are no longer communist, they have to invent some other boogeyman. So it was the Muscovite Jewish mafia, which was exploiting Ukraine and ruining it and so forth. And so these young men think like, oh my gosh, now I'm in the position where I can play this very, very important historical role, and we're going to be a great power after we win. And so now, they start feeling a sense of purpose, and they get some money and nice uniforms. And not only that, they get some power. They get to go around the country and harass, let's say, less bellicose people in the country. And then these guys end up being security forces, which in practice means that they partly or entirely replace the police force. They start also harassing politicians, when there's an important vote that comes up. Then they'll go as far as kidnapping family members to make sure that, the public servant votes the right way, and then they release them. I mean, these are all Ukrainian experiences in reality. This is not, I'm not inventing this. And then these same boys become recruiters. They are the ones who go around the cities of Ukraine picking up men to, send them to the front lines. And then they are also the ones who are going to be shooting in their backs in case they dare to surrender or withdraw. They don't generally fight wars. They are there to terrorize, harass, and fight their own people. And I've seen in many, many European countries that we already have these movements. So, the immiseration is already going on. The destruction of Nord Stream, energy sanctions, deindustrialization of not just Germany, but also France and other European countries. Standards of living collapsing, unemployment rising. According to Eurostat, 45% of Europeans can't make ends meet. They have difficulties surviving. And then you start funding these brown shirt movements in every country, and you see them. They have organized marches with, tiki torches and with some placards that usually say something that sounds almost reasonable. And slowly that gains momentum. But anyway, if it does require cooperation and support of the United States.
Yes. So here's a question, Alex, and I appreciate you brought this up, because it kind of gets pushed aside, but it's the same script in a way. It's the same manipulation. It's like a psychological war in a way, because it really is. It's playing on human psyche and how to take advantage of it and how to use it and repurpose it for their own agenda. But now, how much do you think? And I'm not idealizing at all. I'm just, I want to know your thoughts. How much this new administration in the United States now has saying in it, and how much they can change? Let's say they don't fund those projects, but then you have other organizations, right? Like Soros money or other places, like you said, the banks, they will still continue, correct?
Well, we'll see about that, Anya, because Western, well, not just European, but Western financial system in general is ripe for collapsing. Okay, there's no, the whole system is completely unsustainable, and it already has the seeds of its own destruction baked in from the very from the very start, from the moment the first dollar, the first euro, the first yen goes into circulation, it already has the seeds of its own destruction baked into it. And so what happens is basically that the debts rise on an exponential scale while the GDP rises on a linear scale. And so over time, the amount of debt in the system far, far, far outstrips the amount of wealth in the system, the amount of money that's even available with which to pay those debts. So you have to be printing money. You have to print money, but the only way that under the current system you can put more money into circulation is for somebody to go into debt, and that's usually the government. But it would be much, much preferable that you can create more debt, or the opposite side of debt is credit, that you issue credit to private enterprise so that there's employment and the GDP is growing, and there's economic activity and growth underneath it all. But in order to do that, you need collateral, because to issue credit, bank needs money, good collateral. And once you saturate your domestic economy with debt, that is, you tapped all the good collateral and there's very little left, then the credit impulse levels out. And so now the government can step in and start taking more and more and more debt to keep flooding liquidity into the system, but the government doesn't produce anything. And so what you have is a dilution of money purchasing power. So you get inflation. So we just talked about European Union is going to collapse because there's going to be a reacceleration of inflation. Well, okay, so if the United States was on board with its military, with its carrier strike groups and military bases everywhere, then you could still use the natural resources of other countries as collateral, on the basis of which you can issue more debt and kind of keep the whole thing going forward. But European countries don't have the ability to even field such armies and staff military bases. If Trump rolls back the empire, if Trump administration chooses, as somebody said, to become a polite guest at the global banquet rather than the enforcement arm of the rules-based global order, then Europe is doomed. And by that I mean European financial system and political system is going to have to be reformed and changed. But there's no, they really did paint themselves into a corner. There's no way out. There's only failure and collapse. And then if the current ruling establishments want to keep their power, they have no choice but to start getting increasingly repressive towards their own populations, to make sure that they don't get the Ceausescu treatment or the guillotines, and we already see this process going on in the United Kingdom. In the UK is rapidly turning very, very Orwellian. And I think that the reason is because the United Kingdom is, of all the countries, even the EU is in a worse shape than the EU. They're running budget deficits. They're running trade deficits. The pound is not a global reserve currency, so you cannot run trade deficits forever. You end up destroying your currency. the Bank of England is sitting on at least 150 billion pounds of losses. And the way the arrangement they have in the UK is that the government, the Treasury, has to reimburse the Bank of England for its losses, except how? They can't. And the United States is going to drop their support. They're going to drop their special relationship. And so what you see is now that the ruling establishment is getting very, very repressive towards the British people because they're afraid of a revolution. And you see police going around harassing people on the street because they cover their face when they pass the facial recognition camera.
To me, this is just mind-blowing. How a country like UK, who is one of those three pillars, right? This triangle, the City of London, how the place like that apparently pulls the strings can find herself as Britain in such a situation. So how did you really screw this up to that point?
Oh, that's not Anya, that's not a surprise. Every empire in all of human history ended the same way. They all collapsed. Every single one of them collapsed. And I think it was quite predictable that Britain was going to collapse as well. In fact, I wrote as much in an article I published in, I think, August or September of 2021. Because, when the unraveling starts, the ruling establishment's inclination is not to say, okay, this is not working out, let's just go back to being like a neutral island nation. No, they double down. They go more into military adventurism and all these schemes that they play abroad, and the government goes into more spending. They impose savage austerity on their people, on the vulnerable members of society, but they open the spigots wide for the big corporations and for the big banks, so that the money flow only gets bigger and bigger and bigger, and they get involved in more and more and more wars everywhere. It costing more and more and more money, and so they only accelerate their own downfall. And you can, if you look at the downfall of the Roman Empire, the Western Roman Empire, you can see it in the back then they couldn't print money because they used the so-called honest money. They used the silver coin, denarius. But what they were able to do is dilute the silver content of the Roman, of the denarius, right? And so it goes from, I think, something like 95% silver to the weight of the coin to something like 0.5, where by the end it has only just a very thin coating of silver on a copper coin. But then this process took about 200 years, and you can see by the percentage of silver in the denarius that it goes first. The decline is slow and gradual, and then at one point it just accelerates, and it almost goes into a free fall. And so that was under what's his face, Diocletian. And then the inflation just exploded, and Diocletian issued price controls, and the price controls were very strictly enforced, and if you cheated on prices, you could be put to death. And many merchants, hundreds of merchants, were put to death for skirting price controls. But it doesn't matter, there's the market, there's the economics of the markets are completely immune to the political whims of the ruling class. They may want some outcome, but they can't have it. You know, the market will prevail and they will fail. And so we're seeing this process now advancing in Britain, but I think that Europe is only in a slightly better position. And I think the same is true for countries like Japan and South Korea and all of these Western allies. And I think the country that has the best, let's say, the most resilient system and the most maneuvering space is the United States. And so I think that the United States is going to be the last one that will feel the consequences of all these misadventures, but it's not going to be able to avoid them.
So here I want to ask you a few more things, and I will not keep you any longer, Alex. Before I go to my financial question, someone said this and I completely forgot to mention it. The first thing that Trump announced today was that there will be national emergency at the southern border. And someone just left the comment here saying, okay, guys, I'll be back in a few. They're showing the border shutdown. Holy crap. So I believe he already signed quite a lot of those significant documents, over 100, as he was mentioning before. But this is not about the national emergency. This is not the question about it. A number of years ago, when I was during the Schmovit time, I was coming across, it's just Schmovit, let's face it. I was coming, by the way, can I just say that Biden pardoned Fauci?
Yes.
Did you know that Biden pardoned? So now what? It's not my question, but it's really kind of like,
I'm very confused because did Fauci do something bad that I missed? I mean, he was saving millions of lives.
Yes,
Why does he need a pardon?
Not just killing the beagles. That, by the way, I used to have a beagle, but also, yeah. I mean, he pardoned Fauci. What the heck, right? For real.
I'm not surprised. I mean, you know, this whole Biden junta was a complete and total disgrace, and it's only fitting that they go out like a bunch of scoundrels as that they were, and they still are.
And Pelosi, I think, too, by the way.
Ice cream queen.
Yes, ice cream queen. Ice cream
queen. What? But for what?
I don't know, but I just briefly came across like what really stuck with me. I don't even care about the woke General Milley. I was like, Fauci pardoned, excuse me, but here we go. But I think that can be reversed as well. Like, I know there are ways. Like, if you're guilty, they find a way. Alex, when I'm going back to my Schmovit era, I came across information about the notes, new American dollar notes that have been printed, they have been designed, I believe, printed a while ago. And here is a tricky thing, because I'm not sure if they were already ready when before JFK was assassinated, because, you know, well, we know one of the reasons why they removed him. But I believe there were already notes prepared. And I recently had a conversation when I was in New York with someone who was very much into those topics. And he told me that he actually had physically one of those bills. So Trump started the speech today. The golden era, I'm paraphrasing, don't quote exactly, the golden era of United States or of America starts right now. You know what I want to ask you is this. When in 1971, Nixon removed the dollar from the gold standard, and again, the dollar as a creation, right? Again, I'm not an expert, you are, but I'm just trying to approach this conversation from the side of regular person. So if there was already printed money, okay, dollar itself, it's a fraud, right? It's a scam. It's based on debt. It's not based on anything that has really value. Like the more you print it out, you create that and you keep on going.
Correct.
But then there was a gold standard, right? There was backed by gold. Then it was removed. So what, in your opinion, this new golden era, as far as the financial aspect here means? And then we will end it, because I know it's pretty late where you are and I don't want to keep you longer. What do you think it is?
I'm not sure that I didn't hear the speech, but I would be surprised if by golden era he actually meant anything to do with the metal, with gold, like like he was going to put the country back on the gold standard. I used to think that doing away with the fractional reserve banking and fiat currency would fix the society. I thought that would be the solution to all of the ills of our society. But the fact is that all these symptoms of social decay, this pathogenicity of the system in which we live, which is defined by the interests of the money lending oligarchy, it was exactly the same when they were using honest money, gold and silver coins. It goes back to Greek antiquity, and it was definitely there under the Roman Empire, and then in Italian, the Lombard banking period, in Italy, all the way to the British Empire. So there's no change that. So I doubt that Donald Trump had that in mind. I think that when he says golden era, I think it just means the best times of the United States. And how they're going to do it, I'm not sure, because I don't know that I've come across the program. I'm not sure that they published any kind of a specific program for economic development. But what I'm very, very certain about is that it will have to involve creating favorable conditions for operation of small local and regional banks, and enabling these local and regional banks to fund local and regional small and medium-sized businesses. This is critical because in all of market-oriented economies, it's always the family businesses, the small companies that are the driving engine of employment, innovation, and exports. And I think that this is the only way that the United States can cushion the blow from inflation that's coming. So inflation dilutes the money's purchasing power, and it means it robs those who save money and those who depend on fixed income for their subsistence, like pensioners and people receiving social, how do you call it, social aid, government support, let's call it. But if you stimulate the economy, if there's work, there's jobs, there's employment, the economy produces sufficient quantities of food and all the other necessary products and services, then it's okay. People's standard of living for a time goes down, but you can survive. You're less prosperous, but you have a job, you have income, you have money to pay for the necessities of life, roof over your head and food and shelter and clothes and telephones, communications, and all of these things that we need, transport. And then the things pick up again in a few years and everybody's okay. So in order to have economic growth, I think it's essential for them to have that, a way to fund small and medium-sized enterprise all over the country. And that in itself would enable private enterprise to bring back, to create the money with which to refloat the economy, rather than the government having to, like in the UK, where the government is strangulating the economy, and the only way that they can flood the liquidity into the system to keep it from imploding is by government going into more and more and more debt. And so I think that is what he means by the golden era, and I think that maybe this will also have to involve the United States joining the BRICS in one way or another. Formally, informally, they'll have to make nice with China, with India, with Russia, with Iran, with other nations where the economic growth is picking up, where this economic growth is creating affluent consumers, so that what the American businesses produce, they have a market abroad to sell it to. Are they going to? Is the United States going to join the BRICS? I'm convinced that eventually they will. I'm convinced that they will, because there's only two choices for the United States. Either you again join the global banquet as a polite guest, or you spend everything on your military industrial complex and the bases, and you continue acting as a global policeman and the bully for all the other countries. It's one or the other. And I'm very convinced that the Trump administration is going in the direction of being the polite guest. And I think that the United States can do that, because it has great economic potential. Still, it's a country with a very strong, healthy entrepreneurial spirit, with a lot of natural resources that they can use, with a large workforce. They need to fix up their infrastructure, but that's going to give the initial impulse to an economic renaissance of the United States. So I think that, unless I'm missing something, I think that this is what Trump means by the golden age. I don't think it has anything to do with actual gold.
And with the new money.
The new money will eventually have to come in, because dollar is going to be losing purchasing power progressively, and eventually you're going to, like in many other countries, they keep the currency, but they take off a couple of zeros. So we'll see, but dollar's not going anywhere in the short term. It may lose purchasing power, but I believe that the process will be gradual and manageable for the new administration.
Thank you, Alex. I just want to end on this here. There's a lot of people in many countries in Europe who hope that those changes, those decrees that Trump will sign, will be almost as if he is signing that for Europe too. For example, let's just use this example of those poor children being indoctrinated, and they can choose if they are a boy or a girl. This is already starting to take place in Poland, and not on the same scale as it's in the United States. But and this plan, this demonic plan came from United States. And I'm not speaking for the people of the country who actually hate it, but from those other creatures, let's just leave it like this here, who put those plans into action. And I think if Trump is against it, and it came from US, it's just my way of thinking, this will also affect the schooling systems, like in Poland and other countries who are already implementing this to some extent. Don't you think like this will, I believe that this is connected, like there are certain things that will impact Europe as well. So if this is gone in US, I really hope this will be gone in Europe as well.
Yes, I think it will lose. It will lose a lot of traction. It will. I think it will lose support to a very very large degree. You're right. This came from the United States, from the from the occult oligarchy in charge and their servants. The academicians and think tanks and media people who promoted all this. And once it's banned in the United States, then everybody else is going to think and wonder, okay, so what's the deal with this? Uh, is this well, I think it's now even obvious to most people that it's not coming from a place of genuine concern for minority groups, being kind to them, letting them choose who they want to be, what they want to be. It is so obvious that this is no longer the case, and that this occult oligarchy that's in charge couldn't care less about whether we get to choose who we want to be and what we want to be. It's just, destroying the social fabric.
Yeah,
And
and this can I just sorry, Alex, to interrupt you because I remembered, and the books. I never forget, a few years ago when I still lived in South Carolina, I went to Barnes and Noble bookstore and I picked up some random book for children that was educating you, how to become a child of pedophile. It's, how to be okay with someone. Well, it didn't say like this is book about pedophile, but how the illustrations were presented, how the story was told in that children book about age 5 or 6, I would say 6, 7. It was presenting this story in a way like it's okay if someone is asking you questions or wants to see certain things, and you're little. It's just fun. And I was standing there. I just, I don't know, because I was pulled. It's just how my intuition led me to the cover. I'm like, this is weird. I pick up this book and I'm like, those books exist. There's a lot of books like this.
Yeah. It's look. It's I think it's monstrous, and I'm very happy that the new administration appears serious about ending this. This is of course there's all kinds of everything in human society. There's some people are pedophiles. This probably has always been that way, but society also has its norms where this is not okay. You may feel attracted to a child, but you cannot under any circumstances go and take advantage of that child, because for your gratification you're going to ruin their life. So if you do it and you get caught, you probably get punished by the community. That's how it always was. And I think that if you set those boundaries, then people can make peace with them.
But you see, Alex, here, can I just say, a lot of those people who I saw today walking down that path to his inauguration, a lot of those people who are there are one of those people. And I think this is such a load that I don't want to go there now, but this is not just about pedophilia. This is what happens with those children after they being accused. Where do they go? Like, I actually, unfortunately, have an idea. And I know, hate Trump or like Trump, I know one thing, that he is against human trafficking. And I really want to see, because one of the things with the border was taking place there, like you were describing those Nazi groups. This is the same like with cartels. It's just a different form. It's the same. They have no future. They go into those gangs. Isn't it? It's the same scenario, kind of. It's just different ideology, really.
Yeah, different market.
Trafficking. Different market, right?
Different market, yes. Yeah. And it appears that this lust for children is a particularly strong thing among these ruling parasites, because it's so pervasive and it's so
The energy force. This is the energy force.
yes,
They can recharge their energy.
yeah, but it's almost like the candy with which they attract the worst of the worst in society, so maybe in general population there's a small percentage of pedophiles, but by the time you get to the top of the political hierarchy, there's a huge population of pedophiles, like the same as with corporation. There's about 2% of psychopaths in the general population, but in the corporate C-level management, I think it's something like 20% or higher. So it's like 10 times.
Psychopaths,
yeah. So
anyway,
the system is very pathogenic. The system is very pathogenic, and this is, letting the system operate without any boundaries is how we wiped out 6 major civilizations around the world, because the worst among us are rewarded most richly for the worst kinds of acts. It's the money machine encouraged the worst of the Mediterranean adventurers to sail over to the New World, to slaughter thousands of Mayas and Incas and Aztecas in order to take their gold and silver, and to enslave them to work in mines to extract more gold and silver for them, and they practically depopulated the whole continent. And then, they sailed back to Europe with their loot, and they were celebrated as heroes, and some of them were knighted, like Sir Francis Drake, the BFF of Queen Elizabeth, Sir Francis, who to this day, so many people in Britain think that he was some kind of a national hero, because the whole system rests on deceiving people about the distorting everything, completely creating an alternate reality. And I think that we have to transcend this.
I think before we end this, and I know this will be rough for many people, but I think it's about time that people really have to face the truth. And I think what's happening, especially to children, it's not just to adults too, but especially to children, and then sooner or later, sooner or later they will know. That will be this moment that they will never go back, and they will absolutely shift their awareness and who they trust and who they follow and who they obey, and they will say no more, because otherwise many people will be still living in this illusion. And if by then they see this, and I speak like very enigmatically now, like I'm not like in a scriptic way, I understand, but it's just very hard, like even when I try to talk about it, because I have images and I feel it. And I think it will come the time when people will realize what the governments have been involved into, what they are doing to people, to hundreds, thousands, millions of people, actually, if you put those numbers together. Where do those people go? What kind of trade is taking place? People will be like, no, crazy. It's like a cognitive dissonance reaction first, and then, unfortunately, they will have to do some healing after that. But otherwise, they will be still living in the illusion. And, Alex, before we end, I tell you what I think. I look at this inauguration today, and I say this. To me, it doesn't matter that even Bezos was there, okay? Do I like that Bezos was there? No. But to me, it doesn't matter. What matters to me, let's see what Trump will do. Even if it will look crazy at first, let's see what he will do. It doesn't matter who's around him now. It really doesn't matter. And I think people still think like it matters so much. At the end of the day, he is the decision-making person. So let's see if there is an integrity, if there is a follow-through, right? What do you think? If there is some
I do agree. I do agree with you, Anya, but I would add even more importantly that it's not about just looking at what Trump will do. It's about demanding that he does certain things. You know, the people have the power, and people need to hold him accountable. They need to keep his feet to the fire. The people of the United States have forced a turn by electing Donald Trump. So they've obviously been able to effect a massive change against the desires of the big and the powerful people in society. And so, this is a pressure that's real, that's very real, that cannot be ignored. And if the people of the United States, and I think that increasingly it's not just the people of the United States, like we're kind of all bound together in various way. So we have to continue pushing for reforms, for truth, for improvements, transparency, accountability, and I mean accountability including punishment for the criminals, and then it will happen. Donald Trump has been inaugurated. He's in the White House. If the people continue making it plain what their will is and demanding it, then it will happen.
Thank you. And the free speech too. I forgot. Free speech in US, that means free speech in other countries that use the same platforms like YouTube, etc., right?
Yes, of course.
And that's important too, because we share, you see, if there is a free speech, much more will be shared.
Yes, absolutely. No, free speech is our sacred right. That's our birthright. We use it. We defend it by using it, not waiting for government to tell us you may speak and then asking, may we speak about this or about that? No, I have the right to speak about anything I like, and I have the right to say anything I like. And if people don't like it, they will turn away. Simple as that. And with the social media, it's super easy because they can just click and disappear you from their view.
Alex, thank you. We went longer than I was originally anticipating, and it just happened. I'm so sorry.
Don't be sorry. It's interesting time.
Yeah, because this is the day, right? This is the day, and we're really living in biblical times.
Yes, I think so. And I was going to say a second ago, that when history is written, as this episode recedes in the past, I think that the Western civilization will get the same treatment in history like Babylon or Sodom and Gomorrah.
We will be watching this, huh? Well,
yes.
we signed up for this. What can I say? Like, that's what we signed up for. Alex, the best way to find you and support you, because you actually help people, you educate people how to not lose everything in this time. We can actually.
I hope so.
Invest,
I
right?
genuinely hope so.
Right?
So I am easy to find on X. My handle is @nakedhedgy. And I have 2 Substacks. One of them is my personal Substack where I write things of general interest. It's Alex KRAINER's Substack. And the other publication is for investors and traders called iSystem Trend Following. And that one goes out every day with trend following signals on, I think, 17 or 18 key global markets.
that I personally have no idea about. That's why I'm not asking those questions, everyone. But Alex is on many other channels. Yeah, I don't know really anything about it.
You
I
know,
operate on a
in the
different timeline.
if in a different world, if we were not in a fallen, this is a fallen world. In a non-fallen world, my profession wouldn't exist. There wouldn't be trading and investing, because we wouldn't need to trade and invest to protect the purchasing power of our savings. You know, we could just imagine if you were just paid in gold and silver coins, and you had them, and they were yours, and nobody was taxing you for this. Then you wouldn't have to speculate and risk and trade and invest. You would just live your life. Unfortunately, we are in a fallen world, and if you don't speculate and risk and trade and invest, then you watch the value of your money slowly melt away. So this is why everybody has to kind of think about these things. Unfortunately, but I believe that, you know, with a few good turns, we might build a future that will be able to retire also things like what I do. And then imagine if all that talent and energy and know-how and creative potential gets channeled into writing symphonies or building cathedrals and pyramids, or I don't know, calligraphy, things that make the world beautiful.
Yes, definitely. And yep, I agree. Because that's another thing. Beauty will save the world, like Dostoevsky said, and I believe it.
Oh yes,
we need more of that. Right. In every form and aspect. So, Alex, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you for having me, Anya. All the best, and until the next time.
Thank you guys for watching, for being with us, and see you soon. Bye, everyone.